So we're going to cover 3 topics today. It's going to be anchorage, removable appliances, and if time permits, orthopedic appliances. Okay. So we'll start with anchorage first. Now as we know that there's Newton's third law of motion, which states that everything that has an action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when you try to pull something, concurrently things get pushed also. So there's an equal and opposite reaction happening in the arches when there is retraction. Now according to Moyers, the definition of anchorage is resistance to displacement. He has categorized the units of the anchorage into active elements and reactive elements. According to Graeber, the definition is the nature and degree of resistance to displacement offered by an anatomic unit when used for the purpose of effecting tooth movement. There's another classification which has been given by Moyers. It is according to the manner of force applied. It can be classified as simple, stationary and reciprocal. Simple anchorage is the anchorage which is developed by resistance to tipping. Stationary is by resistance to bodily movement, and reciprocal is when 2 or more teeth moving in opposite directions and are pitted against each other by the appliance. It can also be classified into intramaxillary, intermaxillary. Intramaxillary, in which the anchorage is established in the same jaw, and intermaxillary between the 2 jaws. For example, Baker's anchorage, which we will discuss in later. He's also classified the anchorage according to the site. Is my voice clear now? Abhi theek hai? He's classified anchorage into intraoral and extraoral. Intraoral anchorage, the site is within the mouth, and extraoral it is outside the oral cavity. For example, cervical, occipital, cranial and facial, and these are the examples. So when we take an occlusal plane, according to the area of anchorage with respect to the occlusal plane, we divide the anchorage into the extraoral I'm talking about, that is cervical, it's below the occlusal plane. Combination, it is just around the area of the occlusal plane, and occipital when it is slightly above. Now he also classified anchorage according to the number of anchor units. Okay. Static दिखाई दे रहा है. Picture ठीक है ना? There is a singular primary anchorage where only one unit is involved, there's only one tooth which acts as an anchorage, and a compound which involves more than 2 teeth. There's something called reinforced anchorage also, in which you have an additional anchor, but it is a non-dental anchor. That means it's not a tooth. It can be mucosa, muscle, head, etc. And finally there's muscular anchorage, which means that it takes the help or rather the force of the musculature. For example, oral or vestibular shield. Now the first question is, simple anchorage refers to closure by tipping. Now it is closure of the anteriors by tipping, not closure of the rather the movement of the anchor teeth. So when the anterior closes by tipping the anteriors, that is referred to as simple anchorage. Okay. So in simple anchorage, the dental units is utilized as an anchor unit or source. In other words, the anchor unit is permitted to tip or change its axial inclination in the plane of space of force application. Simple retraction of maxillary incisors using maxillary molars as an anchorage is an example of stationary anchorage, because when bodily movement of maxillary anterior teeth occurs and when there is a retraction, therefore the anchor units do not move, and this is called stationary anchorage. Anchorage is most effective in triangular roots. In all other kind of roots which are little bit slender, usually the PDL fibers are lesser and it cannot really anchor itself inside the bone, therefore it doesn't usually is that effective as an anchor unit. So when a force is applied, triangular roots stretch 2/3 of their PDL fibers, whereas round and flat roots stretch only 50%. Examples of flat roots are mandibular incisors and mandibular molars. So mandibular incisors are the least effective type of anchor units. Examples of round roots are roots of bicuspids and that of the lingual root of the maxillary molars. Examples of triangular roots are that of maxillary canines and incisors, so they are quite effective or rather most effective. And the maxillary first molar has a tripod arrangement. Again, the root surface area is increased, so it's a very good anchor unit. Anchorage is better provided by a multi-rooted tooth, obviously. The more number of roots, the better the anchorage. And also, when you compare straight roots to curved roots, the curved root is a better anchorage than the straight root. Inclined plane is a good example of reinforced anchorage. Why? Because apart from the normal anchorage that is used, we use this plane. That is, the plane is on top of the hard palate, and that is the reinforced anchorage. Reinforced or multiple anchorage. It is basically the anchorage in which more than one type of resistance unit is used. And in other words, it is all other forms except the simple single anchorage are examples of reinforced. There is something called a sweat bite plane. It is an inclined bite plane in the upper arch in which the incisors are covered by the bite plane, or the lower inclined bite plane are examples of reinforced intermaxillary anchorage. One of the greatest advantages of using extraoral anchorage is that it permits posterior movement of teeth in one arch without adversely disturbing the opposite arch. So therefore, if you want to use it for retraction of maxillary anteriors, you can do it just with that without disturbing the mandibular teeth. It is usually used in the maxillary arch only with maxillary prognathism, and though more force can be applied, it is not the main advantage. Now, which of the following is related to reciprocal anchorage? It is basically equal and opposite forces, like was discussed previously in the definition. So, reciprocal anchorage can be applied in all three planes of occlusion. Okay, it can be anterior, posterior, it can be vertical, any of them. Reciprocal anchorage is offered by a maxillary expansion appliance. Now, when we talk about reciprocal anchorage, it is not only closing of spaces. It also can be opening of the, or rather expansion, because when we talk about reciprocal, it is two equal opposite forces acting in the opposite directions. So these two are also acting in opposite directions. Therefore, this can be used as an example of reciprocal anchorage. So when we talk about midline diastema closure, the units move towards each other. When we talk about expansion, etc., through hyrax, the units move away from each other. Lip bumpers are used to mainly move the lower molars distally. It is used as a distalizing appliance. And if lip bumpers, if they are passive, they prevent they have mainly a lot of uses depending upon whether they are active or passive and what kind of tooth movement is required. So if they are passive, they just prevent the mesial movement of molars. If they are active, the muscular forces from the lower lip are transmitted to the molars and therefore they help in distalization, or they just prevent the muscles of the lower lip to fall or rather influence the lower anterior teeth. Therefore, to some extent, they also prevent the crowding, or rather they relieve the crowding in the lower anteriors. And it also prevents lip trap. All of the following increases anchorage except use of rectangular slots and fixed appliance. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with anchorage. So, obviously, this is the odd one out. This is used for a entirely different purpose, and usually when you try to increase the torque in anterior teeth, you usually end up bringing or rather proclining the upper anteriors more. So therefore that is inadvertently a loss of anchorage rather than gain of anchorage. That we'll discuss a little later. What is the effects of the loss of anchorage? Which of the following intraoral anchorage saver provides anchorage in all three planes? It is a transpalatal arch. When we talk about transpalatal arch, it saves anchorage, or rather it enhances anchorage in all three planes, vertical, sagittal, all planes. But all these three, the rest of them are only probably in one plane or two planes. So TP is the only one which provides anchorage in all three planes. It was introduced by Goshgarian, and in this there is a wire which goes from one end of the palate, one side of the palate to the other. It has a loop in the center. In most of the designs, the open end of the loop is facing distally or posteriorly, and it has two smaller loops which go inside the lingual sheath which is attached to the molars on the lingual side. They are used mainly in fixed mechanotherapy to augment anchorage. Now, stationary anchorage refers to the teeth that are not free to tilt. Now, you can also argue that why is it not answer B, teeth that are stationary. We are not talking about teeth that are already stationary. We are talking about teeth that have the tendency to move but yet are not moving. So, therefore, it is teeth that are not free to tilt. They can tilt but they are not free, therefore, because there is bodily movement of the anterior teeth during retraction. Examples of reinforced anchorage, again between all of them it is the inclined plane. So anchorage may be simple when there is only one type, that is only dental units are utilized. It may be single only when one dental unit is utilized, and may be compound if more than one is utilized. And it is said to be reinforced if more than one type of anchorage or resistant unit is utilized. So we've already gone through this, the examples of reinforced anchorage: intramaxillary, intermaxillary, skeletal and muscular. Maximum resistance to tooth movement is given by mandibular molars, again because of the size of the tooth, the size of the roots, the shape and the surface area. So this shows the list of teeth in diminishing order of resistance, starting from the most resistant to the least resistant, resistance in the terms of anchorage that is given by them. So the highest is the mandibular molars and the lowest is the mandibular incisors. And mandibular molars followed by maxillary cuspids and mandibular cuspids, followed by maxillary molars. So it is not mandibular and then maxillary molars. Mandibular molars, maxillary cuspids. Mandibular cuspids, maxillary centrals, like that. And the last is mandibular incisors. Now the root surface area of the mandibular molars, although it is lesser than that of the maxillary molars, but it offers more resistance because of the position of it in the mandibular arch. That means it lies between the mylohyoid ridge, okay, and the external oblique ridge. So therefore there is not much of movement that takes place in the lower molars. In the upper molars, rather, because of the slender roots and the lack of these buttressing effects of the cortical plates, when there is loss of anchorage, the molar starts rotating. Whereas if there is a loss of anchorage by chance in the lower arch, you will not see a rotation of the molars. Now this was discussed earlier, Baker's anchorage is a type of intermaxillary anchorage. So Baker's anchorage is nothing but intermaxillary elastics. Okay, they are worn from the upper arch to the lower arch, either in this way or in the opposite way. It's also a form of reciprocal anchorage in the sagittal direction. So these are the different types of elastics, and rather these are the examples of reciprocal anchorage. So when we talk about class 2 elastics and class 3 elastics, both can be classified under Baker's anchorage. Class 2 elastics are used to correct class 2 molar relation, class 3 for class 3 molar relation, and there's a difference the way you wear it. Class 2 is worn from the upper canines to the lower molars, class 3 is worn in the opposite way. For lingual crossbite, you use crossbite elastics. It is used for correction of crossbites in the posterior region. It is worn from the palatal surface of the upper teeth to the buccal surface of the lower teeth, usually the molars. So the upper teeth move buccally and the lower teeth move lingually. And there is something called box elastics. It is put in the shape of a box, and usually it is for the correction of an open bite. So it is placed anteriorly in that way. So it is worn between the upper and the lower anterior region, around the cuspids, around the hooks of the canine brackets. So it pulls the upper and the lower teeth together. The advantage of using extraoral anchorage is all of them, because forces that are used are as great as 1200 grams. It provides reciprocal action on the opposite arch, and it also permits posterior movement of the maxilla or the maxillary teeth. Which of the following is related to occipital anchorage? It is, any idea? Occipital anchorage. It is the extraoral force, because it's a form of an extraoral anchorage. So many sites are used: occipital, cervical, parietal, frontal and all that. So any kind of skeletal anchorage that is used is a form of extraoral anchorage, and other forms dentally that are used are muscular like lip bumper and cortical plate as proposed by Ricketts. The following type of anchorage utilized in the closure of a midline diastema is, you might say it might be reciprocal anchorage, but you can say all of the above when you, or rather the type of appliance is mentioned. So, if the type of appliance is mentioned like a fixed appliance, it can be reciprocal. Otherwise, if you see the examples, closure of diastema by fixed appliance is a intraoral intermaxillary appliance. It can also be classified as a single stationary reciprocal anchorage. When you take closure of diastema by a finger spring, it is an example of an intramaxillary single simple reciprocal anchorage when you do it by a removable appliance like that. So depending upon the type of appliance that is used, whether it is fixed or it is removable, it can be different. The use of lip bumper to gain space is an example of a muscular anchorage, because when the forces of the muscle are transmitted through the lip bumper, it pushes the molars distally, and therefore that is a method of gaining space. Nance palatal arch and lingual holding arch are also examples of cortical anchorage. Now, if the incisor overjet increases during treatment of class 2 division 1 case, this is what I was talking about. This is one of the ways you can find out whether whether the anchorage that you have used is good enough or are you actually losing anchorage. So when the overjet increases, it is usually due to loss of anchorage. Now that happens why? Because when the anchor units, when we talk about maximum anchorage, that means the anchor units are supposed to stay in position. They are not supposed to move in front. But when they start moving in front, they also tend to push the anteriors in front. So therefore, when the overjet increases instead of decreases, you can be rest assured that the anchor units are also going in front. So what are the features of anchorage lost in these cases? The canine relation is stable and is unchanged, although it should be actually moving back. The molar relation becomes more of class 2 and there is an increase in the overjet. So we'll talk about group A, group B and group C anchorage also. I'll just come to that. In this picture, now the first one shows a just freshly extracted premolar and we are supposed to retract the anteriors. Now in group A anchorage, 0 to 25% of movement is allowed by the anchor unit, and the rest, that is 75 to 100% of movement, is done by the anteriors. In group B, it is almost 50-50, and it is group C, it is the exact opposite of group A. That means most of the movement happens by the anchor unit and the least by the anteriors. So in a maximum anchorage case, that is, there should be absolutely no movement of the anchor unit, so anchor teeth. So the unit should not move more than 25%. So again, it is divided into group A, group B, group C. Group A is maximum anchorage. It is also called critical anchorage because you really have to preserve the position of the anchor units and there should be minimal movement of the anchor units. So it is critical. Moderate or group B is called semi-critical because again they can be allowed to around 50% closure of the extraction spaces by either of the anchor units or the anterior teeth. And group C is called minimal anchorage or non-critical cases. Here even if you lose anchorage, it is okay because according to the condition. So usually in extraction the space is closed in the ratio of 60 to 40, that means 60% retraction of anteriors and 40% by forward movement of the anchor teeth. For significant differential tooth movement, the ratio of PDL area in the anchorage unit to the PDL is around 4:1 with friction. Now this can be explained by this way. For a better anchorage control, the ratio of the PDL surface area of the anchor unit to the tooth that is to be moved should be at least 2:1 without friction and 4:1 with friction. That means the PDL surface area of the anchor unit as compared to the PDL surface area of the teeth to be moved. So we are taking that ratio. So the biological aspects of anchorage, there are many factors which affect the anchorage. Some of them were discussed earlier, the number of roots. So more the number of roots, better is the anchorage. Size and shape and length of the roots, that means multi-rooted teeth are better, longer rooted teeth are better, triangular are better as compared to conical or ovoid, and a root with a larger surface area is obviously preferred. So this is all about anchorage. Now the only thing that is most important over here is the group A, group B, group C. What is group A, group B, group C, and what is the amount of movement that takes place of the anchor unit in either of them, and again the classification in terms of which is the greatest anchor unit and which is the least desirable anchor unit. So those are the ones that are more important. Next time.